Take a seat.
I'm Jimmy Wales. I'm the founder of Wikipedia and Wikia. And all of my projects focus on mass public collaboration for the purpose of sharing knowledge. So we've, in the last 7.5 years, we've gone from nothing to being the 5th most popular website on the internet, and keep me very busy.
And what does that translate to, in terms of volume and shareholders' value, if there's any?
Well, Wikipedia is a non-profit organization, so we're a charity. And then Wikia is my for-profit company. So, in terms of volume, Wikipedia is now seen by about 33% of everyone on the internet every month, which is translates into around 300 million people a month. And Wikia, which is much smaller, now has traffic that's similar to the New York Times. So these are really big public projects.
Right. And how many people do you employ for these two organizations?
For the nonprofit, it's quite small. We have only around 20 people now. And what a lot of people don't realize, if you use Wikipedia every day, you don't realize that everything you see is generated by the community and managed by the community. There's no big building with 600 people in it who are editing and so on and so forth. It's really a mass public effort. On the for-profit side, we actually have a lot more employees. We've got about 50 now, because with the capital that we raised, we're able to hire a lot more people, and we're able to push the innovation much faster. Right.
So would you say that it is collaborative innovation that you're doing in the case of Wikipedia?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting about Wikipedia is that a lot of the things that were innovative about the website we developed as a community, working together in discussions about how to do things. And so a lot of the social rules that make Wikipedia function are the product of social interaction, of long conversations, basically, within the community. It's actually something a lot of people don't realize, and a lot of people who are trying to do wikis try and fail because they don't understand community. They think it's a software tool. They think it's you just put up a wiki and then magically something great will happen. It doesn't happen magically. It only happens through leadership and through a community of thoughtful people working together.
So in your case, how do you actualize that leadership itself, especially when it is an e-concept? You don't see the community face-to-face. So how do you lead the community to start with? And how do you agree on the rules and regulations?
Well, there's a couple things that are important in this respect. First of all, with the really active volunteers, I actually do meet a lot of them. So I travel constantly, and everywhere I go, I end up meeting Wikipedia volunteers. So, for example, tomorrow night I'm going to be in Beijing and have a meetup with some of the Wikipedians there to talk about Chinese language Wikipedia. But the other thing is, I always say you can only lead people where they want to go. And so a big part of it is really reflecting on the community and the values that the community holds, and you really just guide that. And that's an intellectual thing. It's not about face-to-face. It's about having a strong vision and sticking to it so that everybody understands what we're here for, what we're doing, why we're doing it. We don't even argue about that because that's not what we're doing. If you don't like the idea of what we're trying to accomplish, that's great, that's wonderful, go do something else then. But that's what we're doing here. And that kind of principle-based leadership is really, really important in a virtual world.
You have called yourself a monarch.
A what?
A monarch in the Wikipedia world.
Yeah.
What does that mean, and what do you do?
Well, basically what we say is like the structure of the community. In other words, how the community is governed is not like any traditional website where there's like dozens of people on staff who are blocking users or doing things like this. It just doesn't work that way. I always say it's a combination of consensus, anarchy, democracy, aristocracy, and a little bit of monarchy, and that's my role in the community. And what I invite people to think about is it's really more like a modern European monarchy, in the sense that it's not like I'm an absolute ruler or anything like that. It's that mostly I have a symbolic role within the community and certain reserved powers that actually are really viewed by a lot of people in the community as a safety valve. In other words, we're able to experiment with democratic rules. We're able to experiment because we're not afraid that the community is going to go off on some crazy direction. Everybody can say, oh, well, we'll vote on this, but if the vote turns out really, really weird and crazy, we know Jimmy will tell us not to do that, and that will help.
Right. So in a way, it is really solutioning from within the community itself whenever there's an issue that arises, but there is also strong leadership on your part to lead Wiki.
Yeah, I don't know how strong my leadership is, actually. It's really a very gentle style, and really I prefer to do as little as possible, actually. Because if I do as little as possible, then it preserves my ability to do something. And I try to stay above the debates and out of most of the debates, because the community can figure it out for themselves better than I can. It's not up to me to decide detailed policy issues. I'm here to say, look, we're creating a high-quality encyclopedia. There's certain rules that I put down from the very beginning that are absolutely not negotiable. So things like the neutrality policy. In other words, Wikipedia cannot become a propaganda tool for anyone. It has to remain neutral. We don't even discuss that. And if anybody started to discuss it, I would say, sorry, this is not a valid discussion, right? But the detailed thing is, okay, we've decided we're going to be neutral. That's not negotiable. What does it mean to be neutral? How do we achieve that? In a detailed case, that's really more up to the community to really have a longer debate discussion. And I can participate in some small ways, but I really prefer to stay out of it.
If I can take one step back, why in the first place do you create Wiki? And would you call that or consider that as form of social innovation? What do you see yourself as?
Well, it is definitely a social innovation, at least if we're contrasting social innovation versus technological innovation. Because all of the tools, the technologies for creating Wikipedia actually existed in 1995, including the idea of a wiki. It really is a social innovation in the sense of a new way of gathering people together and a new set of social rules around that. Why did I start it? Because I always do the most fun thing I can think of to do. So, I like turning the world upside down and doing things that people think are impossible, just because it's more fun that way.
But this social innovation itself, does it have, the fact that it is a social innovation means that it's got social implications. What is it that you're driving at?
Well, in this case, the big picture vision for Wikipedia has always been to create a free encyclopedia for every single person on the planet in their own language. The classic vision statement is, imagine a world in which every single person on the planet has free access to the sum of all human knowledge, and that's what we're doing. So that's really that core vision that you're asking about.
But why is that important to you?
I don't even understand the question. It's so ingrained in me. Of course, it's the most important thing in the world. So, it's important. We can go into the details of how many wars start because of ignorance? How many wars start, and what kind of ignorance? It's easy for leaders to demonize the other as some kind of alien, foreign, horrible society when you don't even understand them, you don't know them, you have no information or knowledge. Even in less dramatic cases than that, you're trying to make some kind of a decision about tax policy and you want to be an intelligent voter. You just need to have some information. That's really the most important thing. And the more information people have access to in an easy format, clearly explained, neutral, it's not pushing an agenda. It's don't tell me how I should vote. Don't tell me what I should think. Give me the facts and let me decide. And that kind of approach, I think, is really powerful, in terms of empowering people to actually make the world a better place, to actually make a place that we like to live in. So.
And you mentioned once that you're a social entrepreneur. How would you define a social entrepreneur? And how do you fit into that?
Yeah, I guess for me the term social entrepreneur would be to say you're equal parts activist and business person, right? And so what I mean by that is In the case of Wikia, so this is really I mean, even the nonprofits can be entrepreneurial, right? But in the case of Wikia, what we're doing is really trying to push the boundaries of consumer-generated media, push it into new areas, and that's my passion.
My name is Jaime de Bourbon-Parme. I'm from the Netherlands and work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Conflict Management Issues. I've heard from you, Penny, that Singapore has been taking a very active role in Aceh after aftermath of the disaster. And it's very interesting to see that Singapore is taking this bigger role abroad. And the Netherlands, we've been taking some lessons learned, and we're very curious to see what the lessons learned will be in the future of Singapore and their role in the region. One lessons learned we've learned is the 3D approach. And the 3 Ds are for D for development, D for defense, and D for diplomacy. Because there's no way to do development without security or without political solutions. There's no way to have a military solution without a real political negotiation having gone beforehand. And there's no long-term security without a strong economic underpinning in society. So that's the way we try to, it's a new thing for us, to integrate all our policy objectives together and in a coordinated way. So I'm very curious to see in the future how Singapore is going to reinvent their way to be a regional player in the world. And I know of human experience, you must know it as well, that sometimes a big man can be actually very small as a human being, or a small man can make a huge difference in the world. And we come from smaller nations, and we can find the niches to really make an effect in the world.
Has there been any collaborative innovation that you can give as an example between the public sector, the private sector, and of course the people sector? Because I assume that when it comes to disaster or any sort of effort on the ground, you need all three parties to come into a collaboration.
And then there are many different problems, and the first one that jumps into mind is we're working here with the young global leaders in the forum. If you look at the environment, there are people who are developing electric cars in such an economic way that you don't need government support to do it. And they're partnershiping with the government who needs that policy, but they don't need the funding of the government. You see in the disaster side, you see a bit less, but a good example of that is a Dutch company who does transport, it's TNT, to motivate their workers who want to do something extra with their skills. They set in warehouses for the NGO community in a disaster area. I think they did something in Aceh as well, but they definitely did something in Pakistan, where they set up the warehouse in a professional way how commercial companies are used to doing. And they give their workers about 3 weeks a year to work on such a project. And this is an investment of the company in their people as well, because they come back full of stories and they love to be part of a company that does not only has commercial objectives, but also has very clear social objectives, and they're part of a bigger whole and take a bigger responsibility. And that's really enticing. So you see in many sectors that those skills are very required in times of a disaster.
Take a seat.